My name is Diane Reed. I am the Director of New Business here at Search Lab, and I am going to be introducing you to Dane Seville, as you'll see here. Dane is Search Lab's Director of Brand Experience. He began his career, probably about a decade and a half ago, so about 13, 14 years ago. Started out as a copywriter. He has been a leader regarding content strategy, probably a writer by trade more than anything. If you are a current client of Search Labs, you may have seen him on presentations with me or perhaps one of our other colleagues. He has been the former director of SEO here at Search Lab and is also now an international speaker. He will be headed shortly to Lithuania to speak there, along with, I believe later this summer, he'll be at PubCon. So he has a few great events coming up. As far as his current role with Search Lab, he is our Director of Brand Experience. We rely heavily on Dane for his abilities, not only in his speaking events, but as far as his research and the data that helps bring us to the table so that we can be a resource for others, exactly like this webinar today, where we're going to approach the subject of AI overview. So without further ado, I'm going to let Dane take the stage. Thanks for preparing this, Dane, and thank all of you who are joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Diane, for that introduction. I appreciate it. Everyone, thank you for joining us today. So, with the disruption of AI overviews, they really got launched back, I think it was May 14th of last year. And so there's been major concerns about loss of traffic, organic traffic through to the websites, concerns about, well, we really don't even know, right? There's no real information out there from Google itself about how you get found or how you get sourced as a citation in those Google AI overviews. So we want to look at some different data points and try to glean what are some commonalities, what are some things that seem to be really important, not so important. Looked at a number of factors like use of schema markup, number of images, average word count, use of keyword phrase. And we looked at, exact or near match, right? We didn't want to pigeonhole into exact match because we noticed, especially for like commercial searches, it's 6 words on average in a search query. But what were like sort of the core crux keywords within those search phrases, and how often was there an exact or near match in things like the title tag, the H1, or in the content itself? So there were a number of things we wanted to look at, and so here's sort of like the context of what we did. So I manually went through 1,300 different search queries. So it took a lot of time for me to go through and do that. So I wanted to get more to it, right? We looked at ultimately 2 verticals, automotive and legal. I wanted to work in home healthcare, senior care, things like that. But even as I dug into a 3rd vertical, a lot of the things were coming out to be very similar in terms of numbers. So I didn't feel it requisite to, have to try to force it and rush this. So I think there's enough, even if you don't work in automotive or legal, I think you're going to see even how you can glean some insights from even how there are differences between those 2 different industries. So 1,300 queries. I want to look at, of those 1,300, which ones would return a Google AI overview. And I placed them into 3 buckets. And I know there's more search intents than just transactional, commercial, and informational. But, I wanted, again, I didn't want to get too overly granular. And I could go into semantic classes like, Bool and things like that, but just really at a high level, what do we see as terms of differences between when people have a purchase intent, when people are in a consideration phase, or when people are just starting to seek information? So I kept it sort of broad. So we looked at the citations only shown natively in the panel. So when that AI overview populates, you have that little panel that pops up in the right-hand corner, and it naturally shows about 3 top citations. And you can click show all, and there's a range from 5 to, I've seen people even find up to 40 different citations within the whole panel itself. So we want to focus on, look, if we're going to lose traffic to this, I want that brand awareness. I want that logo. I want that business's name to be shown natively in that top panel. So then, we broke down some information from there. So let's go ahead and get into some of it. So again, there's the overview. You see the original citations up there, the top 3 in the top right-hand corner. You see the original answer. What is that primary answer that addresses the the query, the search intent. And then you have what we call information gain citations. So you can see, general rule and exceptions to the rules. There's additional information gain pieces that there's also a mixture of different citations and different sources within that information gain. So again, a pretty complex, robust dive into not just what people are looking for now, but also considering what are the next steps or additional information that are most relevant to that primary term. So again, we just looked at those top 3 native citation panels. So 10,000 foot view. Out of all the keywords that returned an AI overview within this study, 32% transactional searches. So 32% transactional searches, AI overviews appeared. Now, this is skewed because in legal, it was way much of a greater percentage of transactional terms populated for legal, whereas in automotive, transactional was only like 3%. So again, there's some big disparities between industries, and that's really comes down to, I think, like the nuance of needs that people have looking for law firms compared to, wanting to look at actual inventory of vehicles in automotive. But you can see at each phase, more and more AI overviews, 55% for all commercial searches and 65% among all informational searches in the entire data set. But then we're going to break it down and get into the 2 individual verticals themselves to kind of show you some differences between them. So all results, transactional searches. Want to understand what is the importance of keyword usage. For all transactional searches, 88% had an exact or near match in at least either the title tag, the H1, and or the content. And that was really a mixed bag. There was some big variations, which we'll get into later, about where that keyword phrase, the exact or near match, was really falling among those different elements. You can see there's a number of average of 6 in-text citations. I call them in-text. Those are the primary citation for the primary answer, and then the information gain citation. So for transactional searches, there was an average of 6, 5, 1 for the primary, 5 for information gain. Average number of 2 images. So transactional across the whole data set, it's not really image driven. And then lastly, average word count, 1,461 words. So even with transactional searches, there's a pretty robust amount of content to address those different elements, to address the different variations of transactional searches that happen. So I was actually surprised by that. I was expecting that number to be a lot lower because, transactional, it's often just wanting to get to the product or the inventory. Whereas, again, legal kind of skewed this again, but we're going to look at both legal and automotive individually here. But again, still a very robust, healthy word count across all transactional searches. Some other findings: average query length, 4 words. So I think that also, it's a shorter query. So I think that also influenced the percent that had an exact or near exact match to the keyword, because, well, there's fewer words that we would consider exact or near match to count that in the results. Now, here's interesting though. Transactional queries. So people talking about the loss of organic traffic across the whole data set of transactional queries that triggered an AI overview. There was still an average 3.7% increase in click-through rate. Now, mind you, this also during that time, there was an improved average position of 11.6. So those websites improved their rankings, and then corollary, there is an increase in click-through rate. So to me, that says that even if AIO populates for a transactional search, the idea that the intent is to, again, engage with the business, look at inventory, whatever it might be, select an in-home nursing program. People, since they have that transactional intent, they're still going to the search results and clicking through to look at, again, those local businesses, since these are localized queries typically. Commercial queries, 62%. So a smaller amount of having exact or near match in either the title tag, H1, and or content. And again, same thing. It's a mixed bag. Sometimes it was only in the title tag, sometimes only H1, sometimes only the content, sometimes a commingling of 2 of them. Sometimes all 3 had it. So again, but only 62% had exact or near match in one of those three elements. At least one of those three elements, excuse me. 7 in-text citations, so that'd be 6, that'd be the one single answer citation, and then 6 information gain citations in addition to that. Average number of images, 3. So commercial, seeing that there are going to be some more visually based, maybe not visually based searches, but where there's importance in media for people to also see as they read and have a breakup of the text. And you can see average word count 1,397. So again, still a very, very robust word count for those commercial-oriented searches. Some additional things. So average query length is 5 words. So if you go from transactional to commercial, you have an additional average of 1 more word within the query, getting precision in there, but less precise than transactional. CTR, click-through rate impact, 2.7% increase across that whole data set. But mind you, again, we saw improved average position of 7.5 positions. So improving position and ranking, increase in CTR. So again, correlation is not equal causation, but if we're talking about how AI overviews are going to eat away at organic traffic, it also looks like conversely, if you're improving your average rank, again, you're going to help mitigate how much organic traffic you're going to lose. So again, how much that might be, so many variables, so many variations, a lot to dig into, but just know that, hey, look, as long as you're working on your organic rankings, there seems to be an effect of not losing a ton of traffic through to the site. Informational queries, 66% had an exact or near match in one of those 3 elements, title tag, H1 and or content. So even, getting further away from needing to have all the exact keywords or near match within that content. Average number of in-text citations, 8. So you can see as we go from transactional to commercial to informational, there's more of an information gain, right? At each level, we see more of those information gain in-text citations. So again, that means people want more information when they're at that information stage. And it makes sense, right? You have more questions when you're just beginning your search. You have fewer questions when you kind of narrow down what you're searching for, and then even less of a need for information gain when you're really down in that transactional. So again, thinking about just aligning with that customer journey. And so at each phase, when you're crafting your content strategy, think about the importance of providing more and more, focusing on what's related and adding more relevant information to those pieces of content that you're creating along the way. Average number of images, 2. This is interesting. Average word count. So, right, we're talking about like, hey, there's more information gain, but hey, there's less word count. This is kind of skewed because with informational queries, there was a much greater range of words on a page. So there were some queries that, they averaged out to only 104 words within those citations, up to 1,083 words, right? So there was a greater variation. And to me, that says that there's varying levels of intent and need for information for informational queries. So not all informational queries need to have more content, but they just need to provide the right answer. And so the interesting dynamic between information gain being more, but the level of content being less. But again, I think that comes down to there's a greater variation of informational searches and information that people need that doesn't always require such robust information. Whereas when you get into commercial, right now you're being more precise and you want to know more specifics of information. So I think that specificity requires us to kind of write a bit more to get those value propositions out, get those unique selling points out. And then, of course, transactional searches. Again, that's really pushing people over the line. Additional finding, average query length, 6 words. But here we go. So even though the average position improved by 2.5 across the entire data set of informational searches, there was a 4.5% decrease in click-through rate. So I think we're seeing, and I think this aligns with what a lot of people are saying, is that there's much more of an issue with click-through rate for informational searches than at any other point in that customer journey. So again, just kind of confirming through data and not just making assumptions that, hey, look, we're still improving, even though less than, but we're still improving average position, but we're still losing a lot of clicks. And in some cases with some of the click-through rates, there were some instances where there was a 27% click-through rate a year ago, and then across 6 months versus 6 months of information data, it went from 27% click-through rate to a 5.3% click-through rate. So again, it also comes down to the actual query itself about what gets more what's losing more clicks and what's not. So again, it really comes down to, that's why we did this manually, right? You need to really engage with the actual search results themselves and see what's happening live natively on Google. So automotive specific results. Again, that's why I said, hey, we looked at things holistically, but there's some great variations between the two. Only 3% of transactional searches in automotive return an AI overview, 29% commercial, 29% informational. So again, when they launched AI overviews, it wasn't like all at once AI overviews are populating for all information or all commercial searches. It's still growing. It's still learning. It's still understanding what is necessary for an AI overview. But also, even with like commercial searches, not all are going to be necessarily text-based, right? There's going to be image searches and visual searches, things like that. So again, but growing numbers of AI overviews populating. Conversely, law firm. AIOs appeared in 60% of transactional searches, 80% of commercial searches, and 100% of informational searches. And again, I think that comes down to the nuance of language and legalese, and being very careful in the wording that you use in legal, as opposed to, wanting to sell cars, right? There's going to be more of a consideration for something as serious as needing a personal injury lawyer than wanting to look at, a Honda Civic, right? So again, I think you need to look at your own industries to really understand to what degree you're being impacted. But again, that comes down to pulling out a data set and manually looking at what's going on. And sure, there will be tools that will come out and be able to show you a lot of these different things. Some already claiming that they can, but still that doesn't give you the context of the potential of why those particular sources are being used as citations. Automotive commercial searches, 66% had exact or near match in either the title tag, H1 and or content. 6 average in-text citations, 5 images on average, 1,480 word count, as opposed to law firms, 58%, 7 in-text citations, average of 1 image, right? Automotive is going to be a much more visually based industry, right? Looking at interior, understanding dimensions, different elements, colors that vehicles come in. So there's going to be much more visually based returns than with legal. And then 1,272 average word count. So again, still seeing very robust need for information on the page for being selected as those citations. Informational searches, down to 50% of exact or near match in either the title tag, H1 and or content. Again, I think that's because of the longer query string. And then there's also, thing about semantics. There's also, when you're talking about large bulks of information, you're talking about more various ways in which to describe something and the synonyms you can use. So again, getting away from having to making sure you're working in that exact keyword into the content. 7 in-text citations, average of 3 images, 604 average word count. And again, that comes down to the great variations of, listen, when someone's searching for, and I think this is an incorrect strategy, but I'm going to give it to you because I see this happen a lot. There will be a blog about, miles per gallon for a Honda Civic, and the blog is about miles per gallon for Honda Civic. You're not going to write a 1,000-word blog about what miles per gallon Honda Civic gets. But people still write content like that, and then they put in filler content, right? So then they put in all this other filler content to reach a word count, and that's the exact wrong way to go about this, especially for Google AI overviews. And we're going to have more actionable tips about how to, what we see is the information that is necessary, how to structure properly to potentially get into the AI as a citation in the AI overview. Law firm. Informational searches, law firms, again, it maintained a higher percentage of exact or near match. Again, I think that's because of the legalese and language of law firms. 82%, 8 average number of in-text citations, average of 1 image, 1,107 word count average. Holistic numbers in automotive. So across transactional, commercial, informational, there's a 52% of exact or near match to the keyword phrase, again, in either the title tag, H1, and or content. Implications, you don't want to neglect keywords, but focus more on naturally and fully addressing the consumer's intent. Don't worry about working in the keyword. Worry about, have I actually satisfied the intent that consumer had when they conducted that search that they had conducted. Law firms, 74%. So again, a greater number comes down to the technicality of language in legal implications. I think it's still true, right? You don't have to necessarily overfret about the keyword being everywhere on the page, but because there's nuance to language in the legal field, precision of word choice is a bit more important. There's a little bit less latitude for different synonyms about what you're looking for in terms of, like, how many different ways can you say medical malpractice, right? So there's I think a corollary there between again, complexity of industry and matching to the keyword. Additional automotive query findings. So impact of consumer behavior. So cars for lease. When I first conducted that search with a clean slate, right, I cleared up my history, my cache, everything, an AI overview would populate. However, once I engaged with the dealership's website and came back to that same search, cars for lease, a day or two later, it no longer populated an AI overview, but it populated a standard SERP with a local pack and blue links. That's because I clicked through I bypassed the AI overview and I clicked on a dealer's website. I navigated through to the lease page, and then a few days later, Google saw that my behavior, my intent, my personal intention was to look at actual inventory, was to actually look at lease pages, information. So again, it didn't give me the AI overview because of my behavior. So my behavior influenced AI overviews, just like your behavior influences what you see in search results. There's a greater word count for commercial than informational searches. That's because often commercial terms were more precisely written and then often required more substance. Whereas, like I said before, informational searches had a greater variance of word count, again, ranging from 104 words to over 1,000 words. And keyword match matters less. For the string Ford Bronco Sport versus Jeep Wrangler review, none of that was in the top 3 citations, that exact phrase. Whereas the sources used as citations had more general content of Bronco versus Jeep Wrangler. And a Wrangler forum and a YouTube video were the top 2 citations. So again, it's not really about matching exactly to the keyword, but having a sense of how to satisfy the search. And then content for the Mustang search also not have AI citations that had phrasing of Mustang GTD 0 to 60 in the title tag. However, the sources used as citations did mention 0 to 60 in the content with the answer. And they were nearly 600 words longer than the 5th citation that did have exact phrasing. So if you clicked show all and you went down to the 5th citation, it had that exact match keyword, but it's down, not natively in the panel. It's down further. And it was 600 words shorter. So again, having the robustness of content and answering the query is more important than having exact keyword match. Additional law firm findings. There are corollary factors. I have them arranged. I think addressing the topic, having a well-known brand entity, what your reputation is, and then your proximity. Here's why. Lawyers for school injury cases. A local law firm was the 2nd citation in the panel, but had the fewest pages of content or mentions of child injury and or school. But it has 6 locations, which means a greater entity awareness and more GBPs, which means more reviews, more potential mentions of these types of cases by consumers. Interestingly, even though it was 2nd in the panel, it was the 3rd firm listed in the actual AI overview. So the assumption here is that it's because they had the least amount of content around the topic. But conversely, the firm that was the 3rd citation had a ton of content around the topic with multiple pages around ways children may suffer an injury, not just at school, on the way to school, all sorts of variations, but a topical cluster around about childhood injury. And this one was listed first in the actual overview. So when you'd read the overview, that law firm that was the 2nd citation was listed first. And assumption here is that it was because it demonstrated a stronger connection to the primary search query. Personal defense lawyer. The local pack had 3 very reputable firms with high review scores and review counts, but none of them were used as a citation. A 4th local firm that was only closer than one of the 3 in the local pack by 0.2 miles was used as a citation. So again, the local pack sites had almost no content on their site related to personal injury defense lawyer that fulfilled what Google looked at as satisfying the intent, which was specifically defining what a personal injury lawyer is. The local pack sites went more into legalese compared to the citation that had a clear section that could be parsed out and dedicated to what is a personal injury defense lawyer, what they do for their clients. So topical content really seems to be the most important. Brand awareness, reputation, and then proximity. Again, that's only for the AI overviews, right? That's not that, the local pack was still, primarily proximity first. And then assault and battery, there are terms like that. They have two different legal meanings. So citations refer to the legal language of medical malpractice versus something like medical assault and battery. Now, lastly, being cited in the information gain links seem to have no impact on if you're in that primary citation. So if you're in all those other additional information gain citations, again, that didn't really seem to have an impact on if you were listed as one of the top 3 native citations to answer that initial query, because it was a very large mixed bag of sometimes that number 1 citation was in 1 out of 10 information gains, sometimes it was in 8 out of 11 information gains. So again, there was no real corollary effect between having that information gain and again being that top citation. But again, it was inconsistent. So maybe having all that information from those information gain citations in your content would potentially influence that. And that's actually a test that we're conducting at Search Lab right now. So stay tuned. I'll hopefully have some answers, whether good or bad. So let's move on. Other interesting tidbits about whether or not AI populates. So again, intent matters. Searches that had a visual intent return visuals, right? So it wasn't populating an AI overview because the intent wasn't I want to read about the interior of this vehicle. If I have an intent about the interior, I probably want to see it. So searches with visual intent return visuals. And of course, all those cited sources had multiple images on them, right? So there wasn't always video content. It could be contextual, textual content that incorporated a lot of different media. So again, intent of the consumer matters most. General consensus. So this was an interesting one. There is a position in SEO that general consensus, the idea that documents in a corpus of information affirm, negate, or are neutral toward an answer, and that impacts ranking in organic. So that had traditionally been applied to the organic blue links and not in the context of Google's AI overviews. I did however see this in action with the selection of citations for the search query safest forward SUV. The content that ranked first organically, which was an actual local dealership, not just some small business, it was an actual local dealership, ranked number 1, was not used as any of these citations, not just the top 3, wasn't used as a citation, period. I think of the 7 or 8 that Google had cited as sources, because the context of the content did not align with the general consensus of the answer. Safest Ford SUV is the Ford Explorer. That content that ranked number 1 gave you a list of all of the safety ratings. How safe are all the Fords? So again, it didn't address the actual intent of the query and did not align with the general consensus of these other sources saying, hey, based on all these factors, here's why the Ford Explorer is the answer here. So again, you need to make sure that there's accuracy and precision in your content in order to be shown as a citation. It's not just given that you're ranked number 1 that you're used. You need, again, to have that precise answer for the query that was entered. Schema markup. Now, this is a big debate in SEO among technical SEOs, right? There are skeptics who say because LLM parsers don't read the entire HTML but only rendered content, or that tokenization simply turns JSON schema markup into, quote, statistical soup, so schema doesn't matter. And then there are those who argue that due to advancements in LLMs like hybrid reasoning systems, that structured data is the now and the future for AI-generated responses. Regardless of what camp you fall into, these numbers, to me, indicate that schema markup isn't necessary for Google's AI overviews. However, I'm going to caveat that. That does not mean that, 1, schema markup doesn't have value, because it does, right? A ranking well seems to impact citations, and schema has a role among all of the elements you want to strategically deploy for SEO. And 2, that does not mean that adding schema or removing schema won't potentially have an impact on the selection collation of citations. So 82% of of the citations for law firms had schema markup, 46% for car dealerships. So again, big variation between the two industries. And again, that might come down to the complexity of legal versus what information might be provided from about vehicles. So again, look at your own do your own work within your own industry to look at those numbers. And again, that's why we're doing there's a part 2 to all of this. The tests we're conducting, we're going to see if schema has an influence in the content we're going to produce in the attempt to get some of our clients into AI overview. So again, there's a lot of things to test and look at, and that's one of the important things we're going to talk about in terms of what you can do in reaction to all of this. Organic rankings, 86%. So 86% of the time, one of the top 3 citations also ranked organically 5th or better. So while both automotive and legal AIOs had at least one of the top 3 citations also ranking in the top 5 of standard organic results, again, 86% of the time, legal had more citations in the top 5 far more consistently than automotive. In the cases of informational commercial searches, even though the percentages were high, it was a mishmash of which of the 3 citations were also ranking and in which position they ranked organically. Sometimes it was all, sometimes it was 1 or 2, sometimes just 1, sometimes none at all. I will say, though, the most occurrences were in the first citation in the panel. So the most occurrences of that first citation in the panel also ranked 5th or better organically. And the second most occurrences, which is interesting, were the third citation. So it appears that ranking does have some sort of influence on showing up in those top 3 citations in that native panel. Near me searches. This was an interesting thing. This wasn't originally part of the original scope. Now, if you're a local business, there are going to be probably a lot of near me searches or even near city searches, right? That your consumers are conducting. So for brand dealership near me, for Chevy dealership near me, an AIO populates, but I found that only when there is one option for that brand in the local market. The AIO then provides more information about other relatively close dealerships from which to choose. Whereas there is no AIO when the local market has multiple options for that brand. In this particular instance, in this example, the dealerships in the citations are also correctly correlated by the distance to me. So where they fell there in that list, it correlated perfectly to how far they were from me. In addition to this, I also believe there may be a cutoff on mileage at which Google determines to not populate an AI overview because they're just blatantly too far from you. So that assumption is derived from there's one Audi dealership right near where I live. The next closest Audi dealership is Mobile, Alabama, which is 68 miles away, coming out to be around 1 hour and 15 minutes of travel time. For Audi dealerships near me, searches no AI overview populates. There is also one Honda dealership right near where I live. There are 2 more listed in that AI in the AIO overview, but I can't talk. That does populate. So Fort Walton, which is an hour travel time, but only 40 miles away. Daphne, Alabama, which is 47 miles away, 46 minutes. And the AIO prioritized them based on mileage. So they were again organized by how far they were from me. So just a little bit of an interesting thing about, again, search behaviors and when Google feels like more information is needed based on sort of the information it has collected based on where you're at. So again, there's an interesting dynamic there. So let's get into what all of this means for you and for your SEO. And it's really kind of simple, and it's really no different than SEO, right? We're going to talk about a lot of the same really solid principles that you should be doing. But number one, you should be focused most on people, being focused on the consumer. You have to understand their intent. So I'm still surprised that here in 2025, that a lot of content strategies can still be just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, right? You'll be vetting 2 agencies, you'll be talking to your internal team, and someone's bound to tout that they're going to produce 10 pieces of content per month compared to the 3 or 4 you've been getting. But more doesn't mean better, because in the rush to produce more creates greater limitations on time that you can spend on ideating and finding the unique value propositions and the original perspective you need to give consumers what they're asking for but not getting. So a consumer's intent is the most valuable component, not just for AIOs, but for search, period. If you want to get into AI overviews, it's very clear. You must have a direct, succinct, simple, think noun, verb, sentence structure, simple and well-structured answer. Because if you are not precise or are misaligned on intent, you're going to lose that opportunity. You also need to be aware of how Google perceives intent, what search features are showing up, such as the case with the image searches. No AIO featured at all. But in some cases, you have an AIO, a featured snippet, and or a people also ask. So to take up more real estate and have more opportunities to potentially get that click, because we saw, particularly for transactional commercial searches, as long as you improve your ranking, you're not really seeing, you're not seeing this precipitous drop in organic traffic. Then go after that featured snippet. Get those SERP features. Let's update our content with schema markup then, right? There's a real legitimate reason to then make sure you have it. If Google is showing videos, YouTube videos or images, let's collaborate. Let's share that information. Collaborate on how to create something better that better addresses the consumer's intent. So to get intent is more than just keyword research and inferring what a person wants. It's getting a holistic view of connecting what they want with how they want it, or filling the gap of what they want and they're not getting. And this goes beyond what the intent of their search is, but also thinking about where they want to go next. And sometimes they don't even know yet. They don't know what information yet they need or want to gain. So information gain is important. And this is twofold. And this is there have been some naysayers I've seen on like search engine land about information gain, but I think it's twofold here. It's about understanding the full scope of what a person needs to have their search fully satisfied. And it's about what they want to learn, again, even if they don't realize it yet. So it's time to start leveraging all the different tools. SEMrush, Ahrefs, Answer the Public. Look at people also asking the SERPs. Look in your Google Search Console. Look at the actual additional citations. Look at the information gain citations in the AI overview. And again, even though I've seen some folks downplay it, saying those additional links are unrelated, I've actually only seen cases where they're highly related. So understanding what other information is deemed relevant to the query, or understanding what people want next, the next question, the next need, the next interest, you can do one of two things. Build out the content you have even further to make it as encompassing as you can, but still highly relevant to the search intent to get that branded visibility. Or two, you get to understand the next piece of content you need to build. If it's only on the periphery of intent and it's possible that it's leading to a new whole set of questions and information gain. So use all those different tools to either refresh and improve your content or fill in a major gap of content that you need, or create another page that creates a better customer journey for consumers on your site. So you send them to the right place, because let's be honest, for small businesses, a lot of the agencies they work with either have no internal linking strategy or a really bad internal linking strategy. And this can help you understand the customer journey. Content plus structure equals clarity. Stop writing to fill the page with words and get the context correct so you satisfy the searcher. It's equally important to build context with people in mind, so that you're creating something that reads naturally, conversationally, that you're meeting your consumers with the language they're comfortable with. Because when you get the context right, you're helping your customer interpret the information and make sense of it. And the words and sentences you choose around a keyword or phrase also help search engines understand. Structure the content and really consider how can naturally flow among all the semantically and topically related queries that comprise a whole piece of content. What ideas, what phrases, what words need to be prioritized? Where should sections of content be placed? Will a visual help people understand a concept better? And where should it be placed? Where can I break up the text? Where does it make sense the most to, again, send them interlink? Where does it make the most sense for an internal link to help build the topical structure of your website, build better architecture of your site around these topics? And you provide a logical path for your consumers to go. I've seen so many times where there's an informational blog that one of the only link, like 2 or 3 links, is to like the product or inventory page or service page. Well, that makes no sense. If they had a long tail question, they might not be ready to go to like look at your products. They might have other information gain needs that they have. So using all those tools and providing that structure and context, understanding that structure and context will help you better satisfy consumers' needs. Use clear headings, break up blocks of text use bulleted and numbered lists. We see a lot of time, in fact, for legal, there were actually a lot of instances where they had a key takeaways block at the top. So the key takeaways, 3 bullets of key takeaways, and then all their additional context. So break out and parse out the language in a manner that is very clear, again, clear, concise, succinct, provide that clarity. These 2 elements provide clarity for people and search engines alike. You're crafting something that gives a person certainty in their journey as they navigate from initial need to purchase or appointment. Stop worrying about working in the exact keywords in every on-page signal. Diversify your language. Understand the different variants of searches and words that people use around that topic. Match the many ways that people are searching for your products or services. Again, your primary focus should be people. And a lot of agencies are afraid to do this. I think refreshing your content. It doesn't have to be a whole new piece of content. Refresh the content you have to make it better aligned. Refresh it to provide that information gain. You already have that it's already been indexed, right? You already have probably engagement signals on that content. Let's send a signal that, hey, we updated this and we added in something more relevant, more pertinent to that consumer search. We're providing more information to them. So don't be afraid to go back in older content and just refresh it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you can fix the spokes. So again, don't be afraid that this query requires a brand new piece of content. No, where does it fit into the current ecosystem of what you already have? And if it's completely absent, sure, create a new piece of content, absolutely. Be wary of AI-produced content. So we're talking about AI overviews, AI, and what does this mean for your SEO? Here's why you need to be wary of AI-produced content. So there are a lot of agencies who are selling folks on quantity of content because they, quote, leverage AI. Sure, when prompted correctly, these AI platforms, they can kind of get the tone of voice right. They're not human, but sometimes it gets a little too cheesy. It can follow your instructions on how to structure content. It can do a lot of things, but there are 2 glaring issues. First, it can provide incorrect or incomplete information based on what it can and cannot find in its data training set. So it'll hallucinate, which I feel is going to improve relatively quickly. But second, and this really won't change, it cannot produce original perspectives. It can only assemble and regurgitate information that it can retrieve. So be wary that you might just be adding to what's called the sea of sameness. So consider all the similar ways that people are prompting too. How different is your prompt going to be about a specific topic from someone else, and the very similar output that AI will give you? Now, I'm not advocating not leveraging AI. There are lots of AI platforms and lots of ways it can help with all sorts of workflows in SEO and digital marketing. It can help with a lot of different things. However, it is limited. So make sure that if that agency is touting AI-produced content, that they also have a human element to make sure that we're getting in some sort of unique perspective that isn't just from the regurgitated AI output. Semantic classes. So I've used the terms transactional, commercial, and informational. And again, there are a lot of other, granular, you get down to different search intents. However, a lot of these require assumptions. And I believe based on how search results change based on a number of signals, including a consumer's behavior, I think adding in the perspective of semantic classes will help take more guesswork out of the intent that search has. And it'll help you classify your content by how search engines do. So short fact, how much does this Honda Civic cost? Other, what do seniors say about senior living care facilities? Bool, can I become a lawyer without going to law school? Comparison, Ford F-150 versus Chevy Silverado. Reason, why was the Hemi discontinued? Definition, what is a registered nurse? Instruction, how do I change the oil in my car? So this is just another layer of how to categorize, classify the search intent someone has. And then you can also understand, okay, if this is identify this as a comparison search, and I know they're middle of the funnel, let's let's get to, what are the most important parts of the comparison that we see through our keyword research? Like what are people really concerned about between those two vehicles? So again, you can use the semantic class to better understand how to structure your content and really what needs to happen in that content. What exactly are we trying to get at to get that answer? Here's something I think everyone should do, and that's why we're doing this. Part 2 that we're going to be doing over the next few months is test and analyze. Test and analyze. Again, you can have a hypothesis. You can have what you feel are solid data points, but then you want to test and analyze that. Now, there are some certain truths of, average word counts, things like that. And I think with keyword usage as well. But again, each industry is different, right? We saw a greater percentage of keyword match for legal than there was for automotive. We saw more images needed for automotive than there was for legal. Every industry is going to be a little different. So within your own industry, test and analyze and find out what are potentially the truths behind how you're going to satisfy that intent, whether it's an AI overview or not, right? Because there's still plenty of searches that don't populate an AI overview. Make sure you're addressing, again, people's intent. Also, strategically diversify your marketing plan. I'm an SEO, but I would never tell anyone to do only SEO because there are different channels where your consumers are at. Where are your customers? Where do they go to get informed? Where do they go to get entertained? Those are probably two different things, but maybe not. Where do they engage a lot? What sources are bringing highly engaged sessions or high converting sessions to your website? What are sources that could perform better? So looking at paid search, paid social, OTT, and more, diversify your marketing plan. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, but understand how many eggs in each basket, how many eggs should be in each basket, right? So diversify. Don't rely on one single strategy. Have multiple touch points with your consumers. Because again, even with SEO, we're going to probably be seeing, and this is my guess, a lot more branded search because, again, that AI overview, they might not click through, but they're going to see your logo and your name as that top 3 native citation. Again, working in your brand name to where they get to those transactional searches where there's a lot fewer AI overviews. So again, it's building that brand awareness. And then you can use other strategies to do the same. So again, diversify. And here might be the most important of it all. Don't forget the fundamentals. Google reported more searches than ever this past year. It's in the trillions. So do you have the tactical, fundamental optimizations on your site to capture as much demand as you can? Or are there significant gaps on your website in content? Or are there significant deficiencies across your website in optimizations? While I gave a number of things to focus on, the real crux of it all, of what does this mean for my SEO, is that though there are two distinct systems, both overviews and blue links are trying to best satisfy the search, and getting your fundamentals right works for both systems. So be sure that your website is optimized. Be sure that you have a really well strategic content plan put together. Ensure that your Google business profile is fully developed and not neglecting any facets, whether it's a ranking factor or a conversion factor, because not every feature on a GBP is a direct ranking factor. But think about the different engagements you can get in things like Q&A. Think about driving more people through to your website through your Google business posts. Sure, posts don't directly impact ranking, but Google will see that it got an engagement. The post got an engagement, drove someone through to your website. Don't tell me that doesn't matter. And then if you get them through to your website, guess what? Your competitors' services and inventory is not on your website. So again, make sure you have the fundamentals right. Again, really strong keyword research, leverage all those different sources of information that we have available to us, and craft the most strategic, clear, and well-structured content that you possibly can. And that is how you're going to get into AI overviews. So thank you. I really am glad that everyone here joined me. If you have any questions, I can give a few moments here to questions. I don't want to keep anyone. I probably went a little longer than what I intended to. But also, you have my email. If you don't want to ask a question here, you can email me. Also, there's that QR code. If you'd like us to sort of assess your content plan or your content strategy, your current content on your site, or you want us to check out the fundamentals on your website and do a tactical audit, you can scan that QR code, and I'll make sure that we connect. So All right. I don't see any questions coming through. So thanks, everyone. I appreciate your time and have a great day. Thank you for joining us.